Hi all, I thought I'd try some rated puzzles on chessworld.net. So this is the play rated puzzles page. If you want to try that out, I'll put a link towards the right of the video if you haven't registered on the site already. So let's have a go. I've got my cup of tea. Hopefully this is not going to be a total disaster. I think I'll use the hint and the hint, not the skip. I'll try and use the hint if I get stuck. Okay, so white to play. The first move which comes to mind is knight g6. That fails actually. Queen f1 is mate, so that's not particularly good. What can we do here? Knight f3 would stop queen f1 mate. It would attack the queen, but what about just queen takes b2? Doesn't seem to be helping too much. Is this going to be tricky? Knight f7 hits the queen, stops queen f1. If queen takes, what is there? Knight h6. Not sure about that. Doesn't seem too convincing. So this is already looking a bit. So I could have some difficulties there. Intriguing. I wonder about just retreating the rook actually. Rook d1. That can't be it. h4. Do I need a hint? Rook g6 doesn't seem to do anything. Let's go again with knight f3. Queen takes. Just doesn't do anything. No, hang on. There isn't queen takes. I think this is where I'm going wrong. The rook's actually protecting b2. Let's try this. Yeah, queen. Muppets. So rook g7 check. Okay. I think we can just play rook takes g6, and then there's rook g8 after. So we've doubled rooks here, so I think just bishop f6 and then rook g8. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So 1 out of 5. Okay, so here, this looks like a classic rook h1 forcing move for the check. This looks too easy. I'm going to try this. It just looks very convincing to do this. That's much easier. Okay, so let's go to that's 3 out of 5. Let's try for 5 today. So white to play here. Knight f5 check, g takes, there's check. If here there's queen g6, I think that looks quite good. Knight f5 for rook g3. If king h8, there's queen g8. Yeah, this looks crushing. Knight f5. That was an easy one as well. Okay, on a roll. So let's go to number 4. Today's session. Well, the obvious forcing move is queen takes, and I've got check here, king g8. In fact, there's no checks for the white king, so what about just doubling rooks there after? Rook here immediately is also kind of tempting, actually. How would black actually survive that? Oh, I think there's actually rook d6, queen h7, king f8. The king's going to have e7s and escape square if this rook moves because of rook d6. So actually, the threat of taking check here. There's no rook d6 because of thingy mate. So I'm going to try this as the first move. Alright, let's double here. So we're threatening mate in 1. Right, that's shut down with that. So g6 to take the escape square. Or, hold on a sec, the check here, g6 is mate as well. Maybe g6, I can't see escape for g6 either. But I think this is clear cut. Okay, let's have one more pushing luck in this session today. White to play, well, knight b5 comes to mind as a forcing move. Bishop d6 as well. Knight b5, takes. Knight e6, takes, bishop d6. c5. Oh, this could get a bit tricky. What's going on here? Alright, there's some two tempting forcing moves. Bishop d6 or a knight check, either knight. I think I might have to try and rule one out. Bishop d6, there's king d8. So if I want the king to come over here, takes, say king c6. There's rook d6 there, that rules that out. So I think this is tempting to get the rook activated to stop the king going across. Very tempting this one rather than this one. Takes. This is the check. I can't see the king surviving there actually, because that looks very menacing. I'm going to try this. Right, that is. Now rook d6 is tempting. And there's knight c6, there's c5. There's king a5. There's b4. There's king a4. I don't think bishop c5 the king just takes. Rook d6 is tempting. Or c5 immediately. Is there any harm doing rook d6? There's knight c6, which might be a harm. What about c5? If king c6, there's rook d6. So king a6 or king a5. King a5. Check. King a4. Check. King takes. Can't calculate this very well. Let's rule it out actually. I'm going to be naughty. I'm going to try and just rule it out. Alright, here's the move. So b4, that's king a4, that's knight c3. What about just knight c3 for anything b4? What happens after knight c3 for b4? How does black actually stop b4 there? I guess knight d5. I can just take and still threaten b4. That is very, very tempting just to play knight c3 here. Knight d5, b4, knight takes. Alright, anything else? I just... let's try this. Oh, it's not the correct move. Whoa. It's b4. This is guessing. No. Right, let's stop guessing. Running out of time here as well. So, rook d4 actually threatens rook a4. That's a good one. Rook d4. How does black actually stop rook a4? That's even better. I think rook d4 swinging the rook in. Yeah, that's the move. Okay, I hope you got something out of this session. And comments or questions on YouTube. If you want to try this resource, there'll be a link on the right. So it's at chessworld.net, my own correspondence server, which happens to have some other learning resources which might be useful to you. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.